Hi everyone. Today we're going to continue talking about integers, but this time we are going to multiply integers. We've already added and subtracted them and we've learned the rules for that. This time it is multiplication of integers. Now, we'll start with our elementary school example, which most of you know what multiplication is. When we read about multiplication, when we work with multiplication, we always know that it means groups of. Multiplication is making groups of things. So if we have three groups of four, okay, here's a group of four, here is a group of four, here is a group of four. Of course, we have three groups of a positive 4, and you can see clearly 12 green chips here. So we know that positive 3 times a positive 4 is a positive 12, because three groups of 4 is 12. Pretty easy. Let's look at a couple different examples. Now, this problem right here, okay, it says three groups of negative 4. That's what we have in quotes right there. Three groups of negative 4. Meaning, I need a group of negative 4, a second group of negative 4, a third group of negative 4. So clearly you can see three groups, each group having negative 4 in it. So three groups of negative 4 is 12 red chips in all. That is negative 12. Okay, let's try a different example here. This one might get a little bit goofy. So right here, this one says the opposite of three groups of 4. I could also read it four groups of negative 3. Let's try it this way first. The opposite of three groups of 4. The opposite of three groups of 4. Well, let's take three groups of 4. Three groups of 4 would look like this. One group of 4, two groups of 4 is right there, three groups of 4 is right there. Well, three groups of 4 is a positive 12. So the opposite of that positive 12 would have to be this negative 12, which is right there. So the opposite of three groups of 4 is negative 12. Now you could also read it from right to left, four groups of negative 3. It would look like this. Of course, it's oriented a different way, but four groups of negative 3 will just be one group, two groups, three groups, four groups, all containing negative 3. You still have 12 red chips. That's kind of goofy. Let's look at a different one. This one I'm going to read it this way. It says the opposite of three groups of negative 4. The opposite of three groups of negative 4. That is kind of weird. Okay, let's try to dissect it. The opposite of three groups of negative 4. Well, if I had three groups of negative 4, again, like on the other one, here's one group of negative 4. Here is two groups of negative 4. Here's three groups of negative 4. Looks like this. But of course I want the opposite of that. So if I can just take the opposite of that, let's see if this works. There they are. That is a positive 12. So the opposite of three groups of negative 4 is a positive 12. I know some of you are confused about those last two slides, this one and that one. To make it easier, let's just write this down and remember it. When you are multiplying integers, highlighted in the green, the product of two integers with the same signs is positive. Right here, I've got a positive number times a positive number, and the product is positive. I've got a negative integer times a negative integer, and the product is positive. When the signs are the same, positive, positive, or negative, negative, the product is always positive. Now, when I have the product of two integers with different signs, that product is always going to be negative. Positive times negative, those are different integers, different sides of the number line. Product is negative. Negative times positive, the answer is still, the product is still negative. When the signs are different, The product is negative. We'll have the teacher pause the video so you can make sure you've got all of that written down. Okay, hopefully you've got all of that written down. If you just remember those simple rules, you will be just fine. If you didn't quite understand all those chips examples, at the end of the day, you'll probably be okay as long as you remember this stuff right here. Let's move on and talk about division of integers. Doing dividing. Okay, here's your first easiest elementary school example. Remember, when we do division, if you have 12 things and you put them into 3 groups, there will be 4 in each group. So I have 12 positives. I want them into 3 groups. There's 4 positives in each group. You can see that right here. That's why a positive 12 put into 3 groups is a positive 4 in each group, just like that. Let's move on to another example. Remember, the first number in a division problem, that first number is called the dividend. It's what you have. You have negative 12. You see 12 red chips. I want to put them into 3 groups. 1 group, 2 groups, 3 groups. There's negative 4 in each of the 3 groups. That's why a negative 12 put into 3 groups is a negative 4. Negative 12 divided by 3 is negative 4. Those 2 examples, pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Let's try this one. Okay, this is where it gets goofy a little bit. You have negative 12. You divide negative 3 into each group, let's say. That means you get 4 groups. So if I were to take this negative 3, put it in a group, this negative 3, put it in a group, this negative 3, put it in a group, and of course the last negative 3, put it in a group. Clearly I have 4 groups. So a negative 12 things, when I have negative 3 in a group, is 4 groups. So a negative 12 divided by negative 3 is 4. Let's check this one out. If I have 12 things, now this is where it gets goofy. It's hard to even explain this. I have 12. If I put them into the opposite of 3 groups, or if I switch it around, if I put them the opposite of 3 things in a group, that's where I get negative 4. So if you start saying the opposite, here's 12 positive chips, just like it says. I don't want 3 in a group. That would be doing 3 in a group like this. I want the opposite of 3 in a group. So that would force me to have to start putting red chips in there. And if I start putting the opposite of 3 in a group, then I'm going to have the opposite number of groups. So the signs both switch. That can be super confusing, and this last example is hard to explain. So when you go back to some rules, which is what a lot of you guys like anyway, it again comes down to this, just like with multiplication. Write it down and remember it. When dividing, the quotient of 2 integers with the same sign is positive. Positive divided by positive is positive. Negative divided by negative is also positive. The same sign division, the quotient is positive. So then, of course, when the quotient of 2 integers with different signs, you get a negative quotient. Positive divided by negative, negative. Negative divided by positive, negative. That is the easiest way to put it. Same signs, positive, different signs, negative. We'll have your teacher pause the video so you can write it down. After that, if you have any questions, please ask them. Students can answer questions, the teacher can answer questions, and then your practice assignment will be put on the board, and you can have the rest of the class period to work on your practice assignment due tomorrow.